Hey everybody, welcome back to another replay cast of one of those replays that you sent me in. So yeah, you can still send those in. You can also still send decks in. Links to both of them will hopefully be in the description. Keep them coming. And today we're gonna take a look at the replay of W Crate, or let's just call him Crate. And they said in the description that it's the first time that they're playing 1v1 and ranked. So I assume that, first 1v1 and they immediately jumped into ranked instead of, a friendly or a hosted lobby. Up until then, only public 3v3s and 4v4s. But they always feel that they start games okay, but get steadily pushed back until everything collapses and they're never quite sure why. I think that is a relatively common problem, but it means that they're at least comfortable or know what to do in the opener, which is the first and biggest problem. So that's very, very good. I think it's, if you're new to 1v1, it's a good problem to have that your problem is getting pushed back rather than the opener in and of itself, which is usually the first hurdle. But yeah, just a very, very brief look at the deck, which honestly seems fine. There's only one thing, let's say two things that I think are a bit not necessarily ideal, I guess you could say. One thing is you don't have the M36. Blue Dragons is one of those few decks that have actually a really, really good vehicle in the vehicle tab. And especially for 1 point, M36 definitely worth using. Of course, at the moment you don't have the activation point. And the other thing is no H1J. Because right now you don't really have a cheap helicopter that can kill anything. Like, you have the Ninja and the H1T both are 90 points, and a Ninja, which you probably very often start with, obviously can't deal with ground units. And it's also just really, really nice to have the H1J. It's not like you have the Hachina or Shiki or something to fall back on if, you need something that's at least fast, even if it's a ground vehicle. So those are, I think, my only two, issues with this deck. Personally, not a huge fan of the Thunder, but many people like it, so that's fine. What would I delete? Either an F1 or Peace Fasten? I'd probably remove a Peace Fasten and just downward this one. Or even if you run two cards, I would consider at least downwarding one of them. The F1s tend to be a bit inconsistent. And even when downward, right, they come with hardened, right? You only get 2 steps of veterancy, so it's not really that worth it. And at least the last 2 missiles on the same target tend to be as close to a guaranteed hit as you can get, just due to range scaling. So, but I mean, overall, it's a very, very solid deck. Some small things here, especially I think the lack of the H1J can be noticeable in some matches. Lack of the M36 is not as big of a deal, but given that it's just 1 activation point, yeah, definitely worth putting in. Actually, now that I think about it, there's another thing. You don't really have any cheap spam. Not every deck needs it. Especially the Soviets can get away with it. Probably the most notable deck that can get away without cheap spam. But the other thing is just Blue Dragons has amazing cheap spam in the form of either Episode Chung Su 85, or base ones even, in the K200, or Reservice in the K200, just because the K200 is just an amazing transport. Spam is just in general, especially in combination with the K1, really good to have. And, Blue Dragons is one of the best available. But, again, not unplayable. QSM Mistral, or QSM, as much as I like to put in mind pads myself if I can, hard to justify. You have Tansam with pivots and a Ninja typically around. I feel like you don't need it as much, but, whatever. Let's jump into the replay. So we're on Battlefield. Crate obviously playing blue, and Mazai, their opponent, playing obviously red. But as you can see, I believe it's Israel I saw in the link. So they said they always feel like they get pushed back. Let's just take a look to see the opener. H1T is a spicy opener, especially on a map like this. especially from the side even, with the ninja has very good stealth and exceptional optics, right? So it's hard to spot from a far distance, but plus it can already spot itself from a far distance, so you don't need to be very close to spot stuff. And the other thing is, of course, this side has very little cover in the opener. Especially if they decide to go down here, they will most likely drive here, and there's obviously no foresty area. So from this, let's say this patch here already, you can spot what's up there. And an H1T is obviously a lot more fragile. It doesn't have the stealth, doesn't have the optics, and it obviously, you know, has to get much closer than a ninja. So it's starting with an expensive and comparatively, compared to Hind, for example, fragile helicopter. Quite the not something that I would recommend. But it's not so much about the opener as it is about, you know, let's say what happens after the opener. Looks like it's gonna be a push up here. Nanayon Chikiji is also a unit that I wouldn't necessarily rely on in the opener, because in rank you don't know what your opponent is playing. Masai, of course, could or does has the information even from the from the spawn time, right? That they're playing against blue for themselves, because they play blue for deck but get the red color, so they already know it's versus blue for. But yeah, Nanayon Chikijis are obviously very fragile. They, what did they get? Did they get a small speed buff? I think no, they got medium optics, right? They got medium optics with the patch, I think. Still though, very, very fragile, and if fight happens up here, there's some long range engagements here, but especially if infantry or medium tanks, let alone heavy tanks, get into this place, they can very easily one-shot Nanayon Chikijis, and they're not fast enough to really kite very efficiently. But let's look at it from Korea's perspective. Okay, Anafa, so most certainly Israel. Ninja gets stopped here, H1T gets stopped here. Bit micro mistake, but you know, happens. Honestly, you don't need a manpad here. You have the ninja. Paddyfield is a relatively narrow map. So KFE 25 and the unloaded infantry here, assuming you can unload it here, more than enough to spot if there was a helicopter coming, and then you can just maneuver the ninja around. More fire. I guess something was spotted that didn't pay full attention. You spotted something unloading here. Ninja is firing at the. Ooh, it's always spicy when there's a helicopter hovering at a very low altitude just when the infantry unloaded. As you can see, the splash damage, even though it didn't hit the helicopter itself, but the ground next to it, dealt some damage to the Magland there. Yeah. Okay. I'll roll back a bit. Seems like you don't know that much about openers, or you know, at least when it comes to this map. You essentially get this forest for free in the early game. What I mean with that is, unless they like do a very incredibly aggressive helicopter drop, which I've never seen, or you know, stop you with MLRS, bombers, napalm, anything of that sort, you can very easily drive even your tractor, fast move it into this forest and unload it basically very, very safely. With very, very rare instances, you know, in which it isn't the case. So you could have easily parked your Tokyo here, unloaded your KFVs with Sojongsu, your Hans, your Hachiki and your Mistrals in here, and sure, this is easier to defend, but you want to contest golf. This you always want to have this part of the forest from your side, no matter where you're pushing. This is a key forest to hold. It allows you much more easily to push your opponent out of Foxtrot, and of course makes it a lot easier of holding on to Bravo should you try to push down here. Plus, you know, your ninja, it has exceptional optics, right? You have a very good idea of what's happening here. You know that nothing has walked in here just yet. And in Shigis, you shouldn't push with the tanks first, but I guess you're not pushing up there. That's fine. Very, very calm. But you have to keep in mind, if you're playing 1 versus 1s, maybe you're used to destruction, I don't know. But I'm not judging, it's just how it is. you maybe got some habits or something. Keep in mind you have to control zones. As it stands right now, you're contesting Foxtrot, holding Charlie, contesting Bravo. If everyone were to put CVs into the zones they hold and contest, you would get essentially +2 from here, +0 here, and +0 here. Your opponent would get +2 here, +1 here, and +1 there. Obviously, it's not ideal. What you have to do is you have to contest golf, and either first and foremost, and either contest alpha, or like, I guess contesting alpha would mean you gain Bravo. I contest golf and either conquer Bravo or conquer Fox to get a stalemate. So you also, on top of that, have to either completely control golf or control both Fox and Bravo. Or like completely push through Bravo and also contest alpha while ignoring this. So, ooh, okay, that was a very quite a bum rush. So maps typically, they're obviously not symmetrical, right? But very often they are laid out in a way that it is more or less safe from both sides to get control or partial control of zones for it to be essentially a stalemate. Not so much on this map, I would say, because this side can relatively safely get into this position for contesting Fox already, whereas you can't. I guess you can sort of do that with Alpha as well. So that is something you have to keep in mind. So you can very easily get stuff in here. Just as you shouldn't have Crate shouldn't have positioned their tank in the first line down here, because it immediately lost it to Merkava. Your opponent also shouldn't have just bum rushed with Merkava head in first. Energy will should make short work of those Kivati. There's another Merkava, which is gonna make short work of Turkjonza. Now with the BTR 152, your opponent knows, alright, this is safe. All the while your opponent has kept Hotel. The Cobra. That's why it's helicopters like that are just very for 90 points they're just very easy to kill if they don't blow up or anything like that. So that's why, for one, especially when there's open field like this, you want your ninja to scout something like this out, or send an empty transport helicopter if you have one, and keep them in a defensive position, right? Think about the angles where your AA or your helicopters could get shot at. If you're flying up high here, it's very easy to get like an AAP suddenly moving to the side here and getting out of sight. If you're from the get-go, like right after the opener went down here, there, and then told it to change altitude, right? So it's low, like this. The AA up there on the plateau can't shoot at you. Obviously, as soon as you have to maneuver, you have to get into higher altitude again. But if you're not using helicopters, keep them in a safe position. Obviously, it was safe until you moved it, but you had no idea about the enemy AA net. So don't use expensive helicopters like that if you don't know anything about the AA net. Alright, KA-325 sitting here with infantry still inside them. Definitely should be moved up to a hub. I don't know. I also don't know why more AA is being bound. Also, as always, right, I don't mean to come over insulting, right? Like, oh my god, you stupid noob. You have 2 K263s already, right? This may come from your team game experience, where plane spam or helicopter spam, especially early on, might happen a lot more quickly than in 1v1s, which makes sense. But like 2 K263s are already plenty AA for the front line. Plus you have Ninja, plus the Mistral here and the Mithra on the flank. You definitely are not lacking in terms of AA. What you need here is ground units. The other thing you have to keep in mind, this is all cover, right? If you're fighting here, helicopters aren't going to be your biggest issue. If you are to push out and up, of course, you know, they can do a lot of damage, or some damage, depending on what you show. But as long as you fight down here, helicopters aren't really an issue. Planes, sure, can be, but helicopters, not so much. So don't worry too much about that. And even planes, if you're smart about your positioning, and you spot them early enough, which with radar AA you can obviously also react to them coming in and spread them out depending on how the bomber flies in. Which doesn't mean you shouldn't buy AA, but 2 specs plus the ninja for the time being is enough. Plus, you haven't even seen a helicopter unit yet. All you've seen are Anafas, but no, you have not seen a Zephyr, you have not seen a Nimrod, not a Pattern, and let alone a plane. So, if you buy something while you're behind in terms of ground, don't buy something preemptively, generally speaking. Because right now your issue are the Merkamas and the Blazers and stuff, right? And AA is not going to do anything against that. The other issue, of course, is your opponent is taking +2 the whole time. And Sotrix have obviously no chance against Merkama once. But of course, you did buy, or they did buy, where is it? Yeah. And Happy 90 squad. Happy 90s are very, very good for here because of their high AT. But typically, you should not try to keep them alone. Because if they're alone with only 10 RPM, it's relatively easy for them to deal a lot of damage to a Merkava 1 and then, or Merkava 2A, and then the grenade launcher kicks in or the Zeldas kick in and stun and kill your single Happy 90 squad because, you know, they got panicked, stunned, and then died. So in high intensity engagements like here, or relatively high, where clearly here's the main push happening, try to keep them in a stack of 2 if you can. I believe you just lost another spec here, another K263, the one you bought. Actually curious, is the ninja spotted? It is, yeah. Unsurprisingly. But yeah, if you also had this position here, of course, these Blazers wouldn't have had an easy time to just move here and, you know, start killing stuff. Plus you could have positioned a tank here to stop the Merkava 1 from driving down there. Of course, there's still the issue with the smoke, though. Bass being bought, there's an ASF. That signals your opponent is worried that there might be a plane coming from you, which might mean that they're not intending to buy a bomber themselves. But at the same time, it could also mean that they're preemptively buying an ASF to, you know, protect their bomber. So, in that sense, it doesn't necessarily mean something, depending on, given that you don't know what your opponent's playing. Right, this is Segnon of the F1, so that was probably the answer to that, but plane micro is not so great. What are your next buys? K1, good choice. I would still love to see more Happy 90s. They will not double tap a Merkava 2A. Oh, flies right above your specs. And Mistral finished off. Very nice. Ninja also fired. That's one of your specs gone. Don't forget you still have infantry. Okay, you're moving infantry, that's good. So Chung-Su is probably too late to move, because if they were to be positioned here... Oh, there. KFVs are not what you want here. I think one of the buys was cancelled. Are they... One of the buys is being cancelled. KFVs are good. So Chung-Su, KFV, solid combination. Good all around. But you're going up against Blazers and Merkavas for the most part. They're relatively high armor. So Chung-Su only have 16 AP. They will just barely double tap Blazers, but Merkavas are a bigger issue right here, right now. So being 90 are probably a better choice. Because those tanks have been your issue thus far, not the other stuff. Nice. Nicely done with that turning off the MG. But of course they're panicked and yeah, still got overwhelmed. If you're not sure what's in here, of course, you have a 10-point infantry squad. It's not really that useful in there, so you might as well just send it in there. Forgot to mention, the ninja also got killed. F1, well done. 2B. More LVTP7s, very good. Yeah, so here's something that I think happens very easily. You're getting pushed back, you're losing a fight, and then and I too do that very often. Then obviously you buy stuff to react to fight back, but the problem is that your opponents start taking a defensive position in the ground they just won, so the stuff amasses here. But the stuff you buy as a response just trickles in one after the other, and then it just gets picked off one by much bigger forces. Instead of you waiting, you're gonna lose it, I think. Instead of you waiting for all the forces to arrive so you can attack at the same time. That's unfortunately a bit late because those sellers carried Givati. Honestly, I have to say, very good work with the mortars though. Nice, those Givati getting mopped up here. And really good. I mean, it's not really that difficult to make the mortar work. It's just gotta be in muscle memory, right? Because if you always have to move the camera back and forth to select the mortar, etc. But and many people don't utilize this, so it's very nice. F1 still keeping Crate in the game here, but obviously essentially just controlling Charlie. It's all they control except for the spawn, of course. In Foxtrot, let's see. No, your opponent also ignoring Foxtrot. Being ignored. But as of now, it really bad unit buys as well as not so great unit positioning, or just in general opening positioning is are the main issues right now. Like the cause of being in a not so great position at the moment. Let's speed this up a bit. So obviously an assault having good smoke. Very good with the smoke, because you don't really have tanks here. So what you want to do is you want to create cover so your infantry can cross the open ground safely without being shot at. Because you always want your infantry, like most of your infantry, to be in force or in towns when they're fighting, and very rarely move across the open field. These rare exceptions, of course, being if you sneak around with recon or something like that. Was it a blind bomb? I mean, it still did something. Okay, you spot the enough here, but the unit is actually still alive. I guess it had such good stealth that I didn't even notice it didn't die. CVY is aggressive, but you have been killing a lot of stuff, granted. Most of the stuff you lost was infantry. At least from the stuff you bought, because you only bought 1k1, I think. But yeah, there's the Merkava 2 Ace. Merkava 2 is really difficult. You need to move your happy over there, because that's the big issue. Sellers and such are annoying, but KAVs can easily deal with those. Merkava 2A. Ooh, very spicy. You lost your ninja. No, you didn't. You just moved the mag. But, you know, Chenaf doesn't have... Ooh, finished off by the TCM? Machbet? Yep, by the Machbet. Alright. Unfortunate. Nearly would have worked out. Yeah, you want to move your Happy Young and you want to keep them together. Because if you engage the Merkava one by one, you're probably gonna have a bad time. Yeah, you don't want to do that. You obviously don't want them to stand right on top of each other, but I think in situations like this, ooh, this was even worse. The opponent reversed, so you couldn't get your Panzerfaust shot off, I think. Yeah, now they're engaging with the infantry first, but you had your MG turned off. Very well done. Now you want to pull back. Obviously you can't because they're stunned, and now you get wrecked by the... Yep, that's why you want the second heavy squad next to them. If you're chasing after heavy armor with a heavy AT infantry, unless they have 20 RPM or something, try to keep them together. So you can engage with one, try to retreat, and then engage with the other. Or at least engage with both of them at the same time, so while one dies, the other one can freely reload. So yeah, this Merkava could be that. And all you've seen thus far on this set was where Givati and Zelda switch KV-25s plus... Okay, lost line of sight here. You should evac. Could deal with... Ooh, yeah. This is just a very unfortunate grind, it just doesn't feel good. That's cluster. Actually doing more than it typically does. Oh, I actually lost a ninja, that's so unfortunate. I very rarely actually see it done stuff like that. I don't know why you're smoking here. I don't see the point of the smoke. Because it's not really a unit that yeah. Maybe it was to be a fire position, but it doesn't achieve anything. In fact, it kind of makes life potentially easier for your opponent, as it gives them a bit of cover up there. Allows them to park their tank here to shoot down here potentially, and then immediately reverse into cover. I guess you might be worried about stuff shooting your heavy young that are moving up here, but why not just smoke here then? Because as long as there's no smoke, you have a much easier time of spotting what's up there. The ninja did finally die to something. I don't know why. Oh yeah, it died to the cluster. I'm stupid. Epic 90, nice. Yeah, Zelda is just... And in this situation like this, either, you know, turn off your primary weapon and attack move, so they still stand still to kill the vehicle that is there, or just right click them, move them here or back there. You don't want to have them keep fighting there over the open. Even if they might win, because they're panicked, and I guess if you turn the MG on, you probably might win. You just take full damage here, right? In forest you take reduced damage, in the open you don't. So as soon as the Merkaba Flare pops in here with its grenade launcher, you're dead. Not even Merkaba, but just, you know, the grenade infantry either. So it's just very, very rough. You can't engage these Merkabas with just single Happy 90 squads. The fire, I think, just blocked the line of sight briefly, but then forced you to move out. Yeah. I don't think I need to go over too much here. Oh, is it? No, yeah, okay, there's a new ninja, sure. Yeah, that's normal. That if something goes badly, you try to sneak something out, maybe you can get a lucky CV kill. It's relatively normal, but yeah, your opponent was most of the time getting, you know, better trades in these engagements, was able to build up, and then let's take a look at a neutral situation. They're just always like slightly coming out ahead of it. Like they have still like those one or two units left that just stop you from taking a proper position back in here. You have some footholds, but then there's the one more cover that it's around 1 HP, right? Then it got repaired. It makes it really, really difficult to get a proper foothold back in there. But again, the cause of the issue is you didn't capitalize on this. Your opponent didn't either, but they didn't need to, because since there was nothing shooting there, it didn't really stop them from keeping that Bravo stuff. And what they essentially did, even if in the very, very long run they might even be losing points here, I don't think they are, but even if they are, they keep you busy there, and you know, they still have control of Golf and Alpha, and you know, the upper part of Bravo as well. So they're still keeping you busy. They have some good base defense as well. Notice the Toy Jones is trying to sneak around. You have base defense? Yep. You might want to put something here, at least to stop the bridge here. Something fast smoke down here could just easily. What the? Okay, this must be like a huge oversight. That CV was bought for something and then you forgot about it. Has happened to me in the past as well, but obviously you don't want to have this happen at all. Just a breakthrough. Yeah, single Happy 90 squad, of course, is not going to do anything in the forest there. H1T is going to get a lot of stuff done, but just no time left. You finally moved in here. I don't know why it took you so long. Again, I mean, I don't want to come across as rude, but if nothing is happening here, probe. If you probe with your 10-point squad and there's a Blazer here, or some Zeldas, some Rovite or something, first of all, okay, sure, you lost a 10-point squad, whatever. Second of all, you have a rough idea of what's in there. Depending on what's in there, you know, okay, either it's not worth pushing in there, or you maybe not even need much to push in there. And, you know, it's not like if you buy K1 here to push your opponent out there, it's not like the K1 is, the 90 points are gone, right? You still have the 90 point, 95? Did it get nerfed to 95? I don't remember. You still have the K1 there, right? That can then also help in Bravo. But obviously this is a done deal. I had excuse me, kind of wrong impression of how this game would end depending on the description. Again, not trying to be rude, just... But I mean, it's your first 1v1 game, right? Especially in ranked. It's just, everyone starts out not so great. The map is different, and of course how you open is also very, very different from 1v1 and team games. It's just a matter of experience. So that's something you learn after one game or something. Yeah, it's obviously... Excuse me. Very, very tough to come back here. You know? At least I can see something hilarious here. I know where that's going if you try to meme around or something. Oh, still got killed, that's unfortunate. But yeah. Key issue number one was you just not going for it. That's just lack of map knowledge, right? Map knowledge is obviously hugely important because the openers in Wargame are hugely important, and knowing where you can get safely, what you can, with relatively little effort, contest, which positionings are good to keep zones safe, that is obviously crucial, right? Having a tank sit here, this is a bit spicy because of 80 gems in there, especially the Ormans, but have a tank sit here, and it can, unless of course something gets smoked or something, keep this somewhat safe. You know, depending on what's coming down there. If it's just a bunch of boxes coming down there, K1 obviously is going to deal a lot of damage. If there's a Merkaba 3D Bass coming down there, K1 might have some trouble, unless it's a side shot. You can very, very easily maneuver it to like this part of the bush if something is happening down here. Keep a recon squad here to very easily see if something comes down here. If infantry is being moved left and right from this town to this bush, if something drives down here. Right? That's number one. Obviously, you know, right, this is safe, but unit positioning. You had your non-tricky essentially at the front. Where would units come from if they were to push Bravo? Obviously, there's this road here, this road there, and then like this part. Sometimes you might see some shenanigans happening here, but these two roads for vehicles and this for infantry very often. In the opener, you even had a ninja, but I think the ninja didn't even spot this very well. In any case, right? But if you know the map, then you know where they're coming from. What do you want to have at the front? Well, for one, you want recon, but recon is not going to be particularly useful here because this just blocks line of sight. So you want your cheap stuff here. You want your 10-point infantry at the front, your KFVs behind, and a bit further behind, ideally not immediately line of sight. So let's say in this position, Nani and Shiki, that then immediately moves in once those Sojung Su, once those KFVs have been engaged. Same situation here, or maybe just keep them there. Or if you want to be spicy, like in the middle of the road here, so they have direct line of sight onto here. But of course, then they also get immediately shot at. But the important thing is, don't keep your expensive, plus in the case of the Nana and Shiki, fragile units at the front. And key issue number 3 is just wrong unit buys, right? You bought more AA when you haven't seen a single aerial unit do anything to you, right? Even the Kurnases here only came in at the very, very end. And the only attack helicopter we saw was bought as a response to your stuff sneaking around. Plus, you already had AA. Of course, you should always, unless, you know, generally speaking, you should basically always have AA around, which is fine, but you had plenty of AA. Typically, the AA net is, I would say, a bit weaker in 1v1s than team games, like across the map. In your front lines, not so much. But it's very often that, you know, let's say you're playing Blue Dragons, for your defense here in the early game, you might not even have AA here if you have a CVS. Probably autocannons, because you want ground units are usually the biggest deal, but it's again a narrow map, so your ninja can very easily just move to the left should there be a hind coming or anything like that. Plus, you typically want recon anyway to notify you of that. But two 40 points backs, a ninja, and a Mistral squad, more than enough. And again, those units here could have been sitting here, keeping golf safe and making life harder to push down here. But yeah, wrong unit buys, too much AA, and if you're playing, it's also like deck knowledge, right? You're playing against Israel. What's the biggest strength of Israel, or like how does Israel fight forest fights? Merkavas, most notably Merkavas and Selnas. Selnas, not a huge issue because you have Sochungs to 85, which one-shot them, and KFE 25s, which are immune to MG fire. Plus, I have an autocannon that can easily deal with them. Couple of those, not bad. But a much bigger issue are, of course, the Merkavas. What do you need against Merkavas? Either your own tanks, K1s, are alright, they basically trade even in forest fights against Merkava 2As. And Type 90s. As good as Type 90s are, like I said before, they have only 10 RPM. The Panzerfaust 3 is very good, but only 10 RPM. But Merkava 2As, massive burst damage, massive both morale and actual damage. So they stun Type 90s very quickly and deal a lot of damage very quickly, right? So you don't want to, unless you know for sure it's damage or something, you don't want to engage them one-on-one. Even if you don't have a second Type 90 around, at least try to maybe have another vehicle or a cheaper infantry squad, another infantry squad, engage the Merkava just a split second earlier, so the Merkava 2A is focused on that, so that your Type 90 can get an easier shot, or like reload easier. But of course, this was your first 1v1. Hope you didn't beat yourself up after that. It is, of course, quite a decisive defeat. Yeah, map knowledge, I think, was the biggest issue here. Just knowing where can you go safely, which angles protect which zones, where do you need to push. Because it didn't really look like you had a plan of where to push. But you have to be aggressive in Conquest, in Ranked. You have to have more ground than your opponent. And you never had that. The deck was fine. It just, it's just very easily it was noticeable that you just didn't look like you really knew what you were doing in terms of like a game plan. You clearly have like a lot of unit knowledge, micro knowledge, etc., right? Turning off DMG, etc., right? But your macro game knowledge, like how do I approach this, match from my side on this map in this zone, etc. Yeah, I hope it was helpful. Yeah, it's just comes with experience, like knowing where can you push, where can you get safely. These are just the most important out of all the basics for 1v1s. I mean, if you like, it's the same thing in team games, right? But just like in team games, you also just get feeling for that after a couple of matches. Like, where do I put my tanks, or to put this unit, that unit in team games? The more you play on that map, the more you get a feeling of where do I fast move in the opener, and no, I'm probably not gonna get killed, right? It's just the same with 1v1s. And I hope it was helpful. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. And I'll hopefully see you next time. Later.